That's so helpful and interesting. Yes, in a way, in the ancient world, there's this kind of range of experience that's not unlike the range of that we experience today. You're saying, hey, don't pigeonhole. You see one person, you've seen one person, and so there's this variety. And yet, against that backdrop, then, and I think we should say now, there is this ethical trajectory that you describe, that the scriptures do portray for us this vision of marriage, Genesis 1 and 2, particularly chapter 2. So for people who are wrestling with that and trying to be faithful to that image in a world that's living on the other side of Genesis 3, right, where there is no sexual wholeness. I mean, I'm married to a woman, and yet I would be the first to admit that I fall very far short of any sexual ideal in my experience, in my marriage, and so forth. How do we, as we aspire to hold true to the teaching of Scripture, relate to the people around us that have different experiences with compassion? And I'm trying to get us back to how, given your experience, Preston, what does that love look like for people of faith?
Yeah. Well, I think you touched on it. I mean, one of the most frustrating things for LGBT people in the church is the hypocrisy that, the church, Christians are struggling with all kinds of things: porn, sex outside of marriage, infidelity. You name it, right? Divorce. We're broken. We're super broken. We, as in all Christians, are very broken in our sexuality. And yet, again, going back to kind of the history between the church and the LGBT community, we've sort of given the air that we have everything got to figure out, but you are the sinners. We're very big on, we will love the sinner and hate your sin. And it's like, why don't we love the sinner, hate our own sin, and acknowledge that we're all broken and in need of the grace of Jesus equally? I think even though I hold to a traditional sexual ethic, I have no problem looking at some of my gay and lesbian friends who are in relationships and saying, you know what, there's many beautiful virtues that are flowing out of your relationship that us straight people can learn from. I don't agree with same-sex marriages. I don't think that follows God's original design, but I can still acknowledge that, man, I'm thinking of a couple lesbian couples that I've gotten to know. I mean, man, they have a lot to teach me, So I think having that kind of humility, not having such just like a thin view of the whole conversation, that this is bad, I disagree with this, and that's bad, and you're bad, and you're, that kind of us versus them posture, I think, has just been utterly unhelpful. 83%, according to a massive study that was done a few years ago, 83% of LGBT people were raised in the Christian church. 51% ended up leaving by the time they turned 18, but only 3% said they left primarily because of the church's teaching on marriage and same-sex sexuality, meaning the overwhelming majority of LGBT people who left the church left because of relational issues. They weren't treated well. It
wasn't the theology. It wasn't a matter of disagreement.
No, that wasn't the first. When they were listed, what are the main reasons why you left? Only 3%. The main thing they said was the theology.
That's stunning.
And it's startling. But I mean, when I've talked to LGBT people who were part of that kind of 83%, and ask them what was their experience in a church like, I don't know if I've yet to hear, you know what, my church, they were so loving and kind. I came out to my youth pastor and he gave me a hug and said, I will walk with you. And the elders called me up and said, hey, we really want to walk with you through your questions of faith, sexuality. And you know what, but I read the doctrinal statement, and after a while, I couldn't stomach the doctrinal statement. I rarely hear that. Usually in my case, anecdotally, it's 100%. Like, there was always some just really relational things that were just sometimes unintentional, but we'll say things that we don't realize how they can come off, even like love the sinner, hate the sin. Like, that sounds kind of good, but it's actually kind of condescending, like.
I like yours better. Love the sinner, hate my sin.
Yeah. We haven't had that kind of posture. So, I forgot what the original question was. I got off.
I forgot it too. But let me ask you, your answer is even better than I could have hoped. Let me just ask you one last thing here, because you write about kinship friendship.